Welcome to Sci-Fi vs. Reality with Kurt Google F. Shapiro. This is the very first episode of my new podcast, where we'll be talking about the scientific technology and concepts in several very famous movies and books, and comparing them to what is actually possible or realistic in today's world. Today, we'll be talking about the blockbuster, one of my personal favorite sci-fi movies, The Martian. Starring famous actor Matt Damon, and based on the book by Andy Weir, this movie made headlines everywhere. Damon, playing an astronaut from NASA named Mark Watney, gets stranded on Mars and has to survive until help can arrive. The director, Ridley Scott, quotes, "I wanted to keep it as scientifically accurate as possible." While a lot of the movie is either completely doable or close enough to real physics to make sense, there are a few exceptions that were added for the cinema and don't actually match up with real events. We're going to go over most of the scientific concepts in this episode and see which match up or not. Event number 1, the dust storm. The entire plotline of the film is based around the dramatic destruction caused by a natural disaster on Mars. A massive dust storm forces the crew of the spaceship Hermes to abandon their mission and Matt Damon on the surface of the planet. Let's take a look.
They upgraded their estimate. The storm's going to be a lot worse.
Calculation estimated force of 8,600 newtons.
What's the abort force?
7,500.
You ready?
Ready! Anchor it with the rover!
So, the storm shot a piece of debris right into Mark. Now, while it looked great on screen, this sort of weather event would never have been actually possible on Mars. Mars' atmosphere is only 1% of what Earth's is, so in order for a storm this big to develop and knock over a spaceship generating 8,600 newtons of force is entirely impossible. Dust storms of global scale cover the entire planet every 5 or so Earth years, and yet none of these planetary storms can even shift a rocket the size of the MAV. Flying a kite on Earth requires a significant amount of wind speed and atmosphere, but in order to fly a kite of the exact same size on Mars, you would need several times that. The highest wind speeds that a global dust storm on Mars can get are around 60 miles per hour, which is less than half of the speed of some hurricane-force winds on Earth. So while it looked great on camera and provided a base for the storyline, this natural event wasn't entirely plausible. Event number 2, the spin grab ship. You see, something that space movies have been trying to accomplish for a very long time is the idea of gravity aboard their spaceships. The concept is that using a spinning wheel, most or all of the spaceship can achieve gravity by using centrifugal force. Any astronauts would be pressed against the inside of the ring, and it would feel like normal gravity. This type of technology is necessary for the long, manned space flights because being in zero-G for months at a time would wreak havoc on any human's body. The Martian attempted this, and we'll see how accurate they really were. It certainly looks impressive, and after doing some calculations, it is actually plausible that the astronauts on board the Hermes did actually have some degree of gravity while inside the spinning ring. Using the equation Fa equals W squared R over 9.8 meters per second squared, we can determine that the ring was spinning fast enough, and the radius was big enough for the astronauts to achieve roughly 0.2 Gs. While it might not be a full Earth gravity, it would be enough to sustain the astronauts for the 500 or so day journey. So, the Martian does get a pass on this one. Event number 3, gravity on Mars. The gravity on Mars is only about 38% of what's here on Earth, so realistically, Matt Damon should have been hopping around and jumping during the whole movie. If we estimate that a regular person weighs around 150 pounds and then add another 150 for the super heavy spacesuit, then on Earth, that person would have a hard time lugging around 300 pounds all the time. But on Mars, that weight just got reduced to 114 pounds, which is even less than the person weighed in the beginning by themselves. So even while wearing a heavy spacesuit and walking around in the dirt on another planet, they all should have weighed much less. So yeah, even though it would have been pretty hard to represent in the movie, I think it would have added just a little bit more reality and a spacey feel to the whole thing. So I just wanted to finish up today's episode by making it entirely clear that I love the movie The Martian, and I have absolutely nothing against substituting some scientific facts with movie effects. All I wanted to do was to provide some perspective on what is actually happening and how truly scientifically accurate this movie is. Overall, it got a pretty good score, although you should probably not go flying off into space, having based your plan around The Martian.